Hello, this is Mike at GameFromScratch, and welcome to This Week in Game Development, a quick recap of the news and events in the world of game dev for the week ending July the 18th of 2016. So we're just going to do a quick rundown of the things that happened last week in the world of game development, so let's jump right in. Now, first off, all of these links are going to be available in a single link down below, so if you want more details on any of the particular stories, do check out the comments, and we'll link to the stories you see up in front of you now. To start the week off, we had a release of Godot 2.0.4. Now, we go into some detail about this one, but let's just say this wasn't the biggest news of the week, and you'll understand why in a second. So Godot 2.0.4 was released. I was a little bit late on actually reporting this, so this happened, I think, on about July the 10th. So technically, it should have been in last week's roundup, but anyways, let's move on. Another release this week was OpenFL 4 was released. Now, OpenFL is the rebranding of NME, which was a hacks cross-platform. It's not quite a game engine. It's more like the same level as SFML or SDL. It provides that cross-platform implementation of core and key stuff. Now, one of the big things with the hacks community and the OpenFL project in specific, the OpenFL stands for Open Flash. So this is sort of shaping towards being a compatibility layer for Flash developers. So a lot of the Flash programming model and API, the way you would deal with bitmaps and timelines, etc., have been implemented in what was NME and what is now OpenFL. Now, there's tools built underneath OpenFL, such as Lime, which is sort of the media framework it builds on top of, and then there are game engines built over top of OpenFL. So that's where it fits in that whole hierarchy, but it's a very popular framework for hacks developers. Now, the big thing on this release was there's a new OpenGL renderer, greater consistency to the Flash API. So this release is really about kind of aligning more with Flash, which in my opinion is actually a bit disappointing because I don't give a damn about Flash personally. But, if you're migrating from the Flash development world, I suppose this is a huge deal to you. But they're getting more consistent with the ActionScript APIs that you're familiar with. Another thing that they've done is they've committed to using Stage 3D. So this used to be implemented in OpenFL as sort of a sister project or a sister library. Now it's going to be part of the core. Now, Stage 3D was a late addition to the Flash APIs for providing 3D, basically. It's their equivalent of, I suppose, WebGL. A little bit higher level than WebGL, but it is their Flash version cross-platform 3D library implementation. So OpenFL has committed to implementing the Stage 3D APIs. Another release this week was Cocos Creator 1.1.2. Now, Cocos Creator is built on top of the Cocos 2DX framework or library, and it is implemented in JavaScript. The whole idea behind it is a full editing environment, level editor, UI editor, etc., and coding environment. You use Cocos 2DX JavaScript bindings to do your coding. Now, the big thing with this release is actually it's mostly just changes and fixes, but as you can see, there's actually quite a few of them in here. Now, another game engine release this week was Torque 3.9. Now, the Torque engine goes back a long time ago. It basically was the first game engine used for tribes. It was open sourced a couple years back, or many years back actually. It's been kind of just chugging along. Now, this release brings in physical-based rendering. Now, this is pretty much all the rage lately. This is sort of using more real-world materials for your rendering environment. This is where Substance Designer, Substance Painter, DDO, and a couple of other projects are really built around the PBR pipeline. And this is also something that's getting built into all the major applications. Your Max, your Maya, Modo, Blender, etc. are all starting to support physical-based rendering or PBR. And now Torque does as well. Now, on top of that, we've also got macOS support was now in there. I think it's, so it's early on. You're going to expect some issues, but macOS support is in there, so that's probably a big thing. They've moved to SDL as their main platform layer, which is part of their cross-platform portability. They moved away from some of the ugly Win32 underlying code that they had going to make it a little bit more cross-platform manager. A new project manager, a new shader gen tool, graphics API refinements, threading support, hardware skinning, physics API, I believe. Stock physics, blah, blah, blah. I think they actually implemented a third part. Okay, no, it's not. The beginnings of an entity component system are being added to the engine. So this entity component systems are basically the de facto way of storing data in most game engines these days. So Torque is getting tentative ECS support built in. ASIMP support, ASIMP or Asset Importer is a open source importer for just about every 3D file format you can imagine. So basically you're getting a lot more file format supports in the Torque engine because they implemented ASIMP. New template, base template, and HTC Vive support. So pretty big release there from Torque. Now the reason why I said this earlier, Godot 2.0.4 release was is because just 2 days after I reported that, they released 2.1 beta. So that kind of supplanted the whole thing. Now 2.1 is all about refinement, usability, that kind of stuff. And you know, some of the stuff may seem kind of minor, but it's things that if you're working in the engine on a daily basis, you're going to love. And then there's some stuff that's basically evolutionary, the stuff that as an engine matures, you like to start seeing, like improved documentation, which is definitely a big thing. In this guide, there is a new asset sharing platform, so you're going to be able to basically sort of like the Unity store is going to be implemented in Godot. There's a new plugin API, so basically changing the way that plugins are created, making them easier to use, easier to add, easier to enable, etc. Support for dynamic fonts. Now where they really kind of get cool is in your editor changes. They've done a couple things such as you can now drag and drop, which is, again, one of those things that when you're working on things on a daily basis, drag and drop support is one of those things that always felt like it was missing in there. Fully internationalized editor UI, so to people that are from non-English speaking countries, I'm sure you're going to enjoy that, actually being able to use the UI in your native language. Customizable key bindings, which is another thing that's nice. So if you're, you have your hotkeys that you like working with, you can now actually set them. One that I love is there's now HDPI, or high DPI monitor support, or Retina support is now built in, which is a biggie. I hate that this is one of those things that's taking so long to actually adopt across the board. So it's nice to see that one in there, especially because I actually use a high DPI display. So it is important to me, I suppose. As I said earlier, drag and drop support was added. Now drag and drop is it's in a couple different ways. You can now use it to bring in file systems. You can bring it in, I think, for adding components to existing things. And another one that's really kind of cool is you can now reparent nodes via drag and drop. And reparenting nodes has always been a bit of a pain in the ass in Godot, so that's a nice change to see, of course. And then some, improved asset pipeline, improved thumbnailer, and changes to the animated sprite feature. So that is Godot 2.1 beta. Of course, it is a beta, so if you do use it and run into some problems, please do support, report it so they can get the feedback in and fix things. But definitely a big usability change, and you can see it when you actually open up the editor. It does look a whole lot more polished, I think. So they've been making real strides with Godot 2 on for better support across these things. I think they also get into a little bit about what is in the 2.2 pipeline, but that's a different discussion. I'm actually going to do a video of new features in Godot at some point coming soon. Now, another release this week was the Unity released patch 5.3.5 P8. Now, one of these things that I'm finding a little strange is they do fixes and improvements separately, but these fixes often sound like improvement. I don't know why they do this as a separate category. Improvements and fixes are kind of indistinguishable to me because it's all pretty minor stuff for the most part. It's a bunch of bug fixes. They removed some outdated comments. I don't even know why that's not considered a fix. Removed an error message. Again, I don't know why that's not a fix. And documented for the display API. And then as you can see here, there's a dozen or so actual fixes in this release as well. Another release this week was Spine 3.4 was released. Now, Spine is a very cool 2D animation, IK bone-based animation system. So basically, what you do is you take your images, however you wish to have them, such as this tank, for example, and you cut it up into pieces, and then use their underlying animation system to animate it. Now, the big thing that this guy added, and if you are interested in more information, I did a full look at Spine in action, including a video. So this is linked as part of the story. So if you want more information on Spine, please do check that out. It is a really cool program for sure. Now this one got some key new features, as you can see right here. This is their path-based deformation support. So you can see your animation is going to animate along the spine or the spline here that you've got going, like so. So this is enabling you to do things like what you see there. So spline-based and path-based constraints are very, very cool. Improved transformation constraints, so you can do things like, parent one set of translations to another. So you could have something like a hat to a hand type animation sequence setup. Improved shearings, which is skewing, squashing, and stretching all kind of together. New loaders are all now being brought up to be compatible with 3.4. The old Cocos version 2 runtime has been deprecated because Cocos v2 itself has been deprecated. They're up to v3 point something now, so that's not really shocking. And they're currently working on the runtime for Flash. Now, one of the things that's actually interesting with these guys is the people that make Spline is a company called Esoteric Software, and they just hired Mario Zechner, and Mario is actually the guy behind libgdx, and libgdx is the technology that Spline is built on. So kind of a small world feature there, but these runtimes that you're seeing, these rapid developments there, that's Mario's work. So you could probably expect to see more of this kind of stuff coming soon because they've got more manpower there, which is kind of cool. And the final announcement, this came just today, is PlayCanvas just announced new, simpler pricing. Now, PlayCanvas is an HTML5 WebGL game engine, editor, everything all in one. And it's actually quite cool. If you're interested in it, I did a closer look, also linked, as you can see down below. And the existing pricing, we'll get back to that in a second, is quite a bit better than the previous pricing. It's a lot more streamlined. But here you can see the editor in action. It's a very cool engine, actually. I do recommend you check it out. Also, if you scroll down to the bottom of this link, you'll see I've also done a closer look video for this engine as well. So if you've never heard of PlayCanvas, I do recommend you check it out. Now, what has happened in this release? So here's the previous pricing. Basically, it was sort of scattergun. You had these, you had a free tier, and then you had Pro 5, Pro 10, Pro 20, and then on top of that, you had Organization 10, 20, etc. So you had a set for organizations and a set of, Pro upgrade versions. Well, that's all been changed now. Much more simplified. There are now 3 tiers. There's free, there's personal, and organization. So basically, you're paying per person per month. Now, the free version, the biggest catch here is all of your projects are public. So if you're working on an open source project, no issues there at all. Now, the other thing is you also have to show a PlayCanvas splash screen on startup. So that's the biggie there. We move up to the personal level. So the free tier gets 200 megabytes of asset space. Personal goes up to 1 gigabyte. You have, so 1 gigabyte there. Now, the big thing here is you can now have unlimited private projects as well, whereas their old one used to limit you to a fixed number and did it on team sizes. So they've gone up now to unlimited number of projects. Now, there's actually one thing you might have noticed here is there's a huge jump for certain people. So you see here, you can have a team of up to 5, smaller space, a limited number of private projects, but it was $15 a month. Now it's $15 per seat per month. So if you're a small team, this is actually a huge price increase for you. And then we get into the organization level. This is basically 10 gigabytes limitation, no splash screen requirement. So this one does have a splash screen requirement still. So they've removed the splash screen requirement there, and then on top of that, they've built in a number of team management features with this release. So this is, if you're an organization working using it for your game development, you're paying $50 per developer. Now, the next thing you'll see is their new organization is a convenient way to manage users and projects for businesses or larger projects. Organization, you can specify multiple administrators who can add or remove users within project-based permissions. Additional organization plans come with a convenient single invoice. Basically, you get billed for one person as opposed to the number of seats you've got licensed. So those are some pretty major changes to the PlayCanvas pricing. If you think pricing is fair or not, it's a conversation I don't really want to get into because it's all relative to your ability to pay, your requirements of the engine, your costs. So basically, for a small indie developer, $10 a month or $15 a month or $50 a month can seem outrageous. Whereas if you're paying salaries, generally software licensing fees, there's a pittance compared to salaries. So if it's a time saver, it's a no-brainer. So cost is really one of those things that's very relative to the people involved. But this pricing model, while not always an improvement, is definitely more streamlined, more straightforward, and for the most part, in my opinion, basically fair. Having the free tier in there, and the differences at each different tier is definitely a good thing. Now, I know some people are very avidly anti-splash screen, and you are looking at $50 a month to get rid of that. So that is, if you're in that camp, this pricing is quite harsh. So if you're a single developer who wants to release a game using PlayCanvas, which by the way, you can bundle as a native app, it's part of the functionality of the personal and organization tiers. But if you don't want that PlayCanvas price splash screen in there, this is the price you're looking at. And if that's all you want this tier for, yeah, that hurts. I can get that for sure. And basically that's it. That is this week in game development. Again, I do one of these every week, as along with tutorials, reviews, etc. So if you did enjoy that, please do click like and subscribe. We do all kinds of stuff. Hopefully you'll find it entertaining. All right, see you all later. Goodbye.